G'day everyone from down under here in the lovely sunny Melbourne, where the spring flowers I noticed are just about popping off the trees now. I live in an area where we're famous for our fruit trees, so there's stacks and stacks of fruit trees that are just about to come into blossom. So I'm really looking forward to that because I want to actually take some models out to do some shots with them amongst all of the flowering trees, the apples and pears and apricots and everything else. Because it's just so beautiful. They're just about starting now, so I reckon in another week or so it's probably going to be about the perfect time, so I'm looking forward to that. I'm also looking forward to when the canola, I don't know whether you guys in the US and the UK call it canola, but it's massive fields of yellow. That'll be out very shortly as well, so I'm going to try and do some model shoots in that as well, so I'm really looking forward to it. Plus, we're getting out of winter, which is great. I just wanted to say hi to these people that are actually here already. We've got the Fate Factory, Richard's here from Trinidad and Tobago. We've got Robert's here. Three Trees Photography is here, and Take the Shooter's here. Take the Shooter said I'm still wearing the same clothes from the pre-show. I haven't got that much of a budget. I love you guys. It cracks me up. So today we're going to go through a little bit of news. There's not much around actually on the Sony side of things, so it won't be too much, but I thought I could just talk to you about a little bit of news that I've come across over the last few days, and then I'll take you through a shoot. It's going to be something a little bit different today because I'm going to show you an engagement session. I thought we'd go through that together. That was done a while ago, but it's still relevant, so we'll have a look. Three Trees said, I seriously laughed so hard on that A9 video. If you haven't watched that video, I'll leave it on the link actually at the end. You'll see it at the end. It's a video talking about the A9 overheating. So if you don't know what Three Trees is talking about, that's what it's talking about. But you'd have to see it on the live chat to understand what that's going on about. All right, so let's go on some news. First of all, let's have a look. So there was an update during the week for the a6500, which I have now updated. I noticed too they've got my favourite lens on there. Oh my God, I love that lens. I must review that lens again because honestly, that probably is my favourite lens with the 35 and also the full frame 35 1.4. That lens on the a6500 is to die for, and seriously, if you've not got that lens and you can get the funds to do it and you can only have one lens on your camera, I would put that on. I would be happy with the a6500 if I had that lens, the 24 1.8 and also the 18 to 105, and that would do me the whole time, I think, on the Sony a6500. But there was a new firmware that came out the other day that apparently has had some updates. They're saying that it updates the stabilization on video, and I've updated and I can't really tell the difference, to be honest. So let me know if you guys have got any opinions about that, whether you've already upgraded to that firmware and whether you've noticed difference. And I noticed too that this morning Dave Dougddale actually did a review, and you can watch it. I'll see if I can put the link down below so you can look at this a bit later, and he's actually showed it pre 1.04, so 1.03 and then 1.04, and really I can't tell there's any difference at all. I mean, obviously it's worthwhile doing. I'm just wondering too whether it does fix that little glitch that the a6500 had, but some people had it jittering. I'm wondering whether that Sony have fixed that and they're just not saying that, but that could be something that they've actually fixed in the camera, because a number of people were reporting that was happening. So if you have got that problem with the jittering and then you upgrade to 1.04 and it stops it, let me know if it has improved that or not. But I certainly haven't noticed any difference with it myself. It just seems to be basically exactly the same, and Dave, what he's showing is saying the same thing as well. And so, like I said, I'll put that in the comment box down below so that you can read all about that as well. Just be careful that you do have a full battery if you're going to do this, of course. And sometimes I've had them where they stall. Just let me turn my watch off so I don't get this ringing all the time. if they seem to stall, just keep going, and sometimes you have to take the battery out at the end, so don't panic. It can take up to 30 minutes sometimes to upgrade these firmware, so if you do upgrade your camera, don't panic if it does take a long time. But just make sure that you have a full battery in your camera, and make sure if you're doing it from your laptop that the laptop is connected to power, or that also has a full battery. And just try if you can to use the original cable that came with the camera as well. These are just things that you want to make sure you've got if you're upgrading your camera. And keep throwing in questions to the live chat, guys, because I will come back to that when we have questions at the end. We'll go right through them so we can answer for everyone. Another thing that I saw the other day, I watched this. I'm not sure whether any of you have watched this video that was around that showed the Sony A9 versus the Canon 1DX and the D5. This guy, I can't remember his name. I'm just trying to see. Oh, Michael the Maven, it says, was his name. And I watched the full thing. Now, it was an interesting comparison between all the three cameras, but I'm just a bit confused about the way he was using the camera. I think one of the issues with the Sony, some people come from the digital SLR side and then they still treat it like a digital SLR, and that can be a real problem with using the Sony focusing system. It took me a while too when I left Nikon and went over to, or Nikon, when I went over to Nikon and I still use the Sony in similar ways, the focusing. I had to move the focusing point around manually and stuff like that, and it took me a while to trust the actual focus on the camera. Once I did actually start to trust it, that's where the camera basically excels. Like when he was doing the test that he was doing, for instance, he wasn't using wide area, which to me was a bit weird, the way that he was actually doing that test. So he was saying that the test when it was zooming in wasn't as good as what the other cameras were getting when they were zooming in during the actual focus. I think the issue was with his camera that he wasn't using the focus the correct way. I've often used lock-on AF, which is amazing, but also if you're trying to track something, it's way better, I believe, to be using the wide area focus area, which tracks so much better for moving objects. So I'm not so sure that, I think that test probably should be redone and he should be looking at those settings as well. So if you haven't watched that test, watch it and then leave a comment in the comments down below, because I'd love to hear what your opinion is about this test as well. But I think that test was a little bit flawed. Now, the interesting thing was, though, in that test was he did color comparison between all the cameras at the end, and you didn't know what those cameras were when you were looking at the colors. Now, you'll have to go through it to actually see how that test works, but I got by far more, I think it was 9 or something out of, I can't remember, but I got far more Sony, I chose the Sony far more than I did the other cameras. So when they're talking now that Canon, say for instance that Sony's color science is not as good, the skin tones aren't as good, well, I don't think that's true anymore. And I've said before on the statements that I think the Sony A9 particularly has a different look to the other Sony cameras, and I think that they really have improve their color science in the Sony A9. And do the test yourself and see what you think about that as well. But I definitely had more Sony than I did through the other two cameras. It was the Sony #1, the Canon came second, and the Nikon came third. And Dave Dougddale said the same thing in the comments. I noticed that he said the same thing as well, and he chose the same number I did. So take that test yourself, because I'd be curious to know whether you believe that the Sony A9 has improved the color science. I think it has, and I think you're going to probably start to see this all the way through. I'm hoping there's like a firmware upgrade to the other Sony cameras. I mean, I'm not sure if I'll hold my breath on that, but definitely the new Sony cameras that are going to be coming out are going to be having the same color science that the A9 has, which has to be a really good benefit. And then don't believe what any of these Canon people tell you that the Sony skin colors aren't as good. Take that test and I think you'll be surprised at the outcome. But definitely better color science. So let me know what you think about that, and we'll discuss this too in the live chat a little bit later on, because I'd just be curious to know, what you guys think about that, because I honestly believe that test was flawed in that it was a fair comparison overall, all the tests, but the focusing was silly the way that he did it. And like I said, you'll have to watch that test to see what I'm talking about. But he definitely didn't use the A9 to its full potential. And I can't remember that guy that worked with, did that thing with Max Urov. he did another comment somewhere online that I read saying that this test was flawed as well. You'll find that if you look at Max Eurov's site, he did a test for the Sony A9 against the D5, and he said that the Sony was far better in the focusing than what the D5 was. And in fact, he shoots with the with the A9 now. And he said that it was flawed as well, the way that he was shooting. And what you've got to do with the Sony, you do naturally have to trust its AF system. That's the way it's built. So make sure if you are switching to Sony and you're trying to try the focusing and everything of what the Sony gives you, make sure that you do trust the focusing that's in there, because that camera's focusing systems are there to aid you to do it. And that's the way you've got to do it. You can't think the old way like when you were using your Nikon and Canon cameras. You have to think totally different with these systems. So yeah, let me know what you think anyway, and we'll have a discussion on this too when we go through the questions a little bit later. The last thing that I wanted to talk to you about was this that was just released the other day. And I know this is the Sony chat, but this is a Sony sensor being used in this camera. So I think what you're going to find is that the image results from this, because this is now a much newer camera than what the A7R2 is, because this sensor is probably very similar to what the A7R2 is, I think you're going to find the image results from this camera are going to be outstanding. And I think Sony have probably released that sensor to Nikon, because they're obviously going to release something like the A7R or the A9R or the A7 III with that sensor, the new sensor in it, which is probably going to blow the D850 away again. I don't think Sony would have given that sensor away if they weren't prepared for something a lot bigger that's coming up. But if you are shooting at the moment, and this is the thing, I just wanted to talk about this, that it seems like it's an amazing camera, and I don't know whether all of you have reviewed the specs on this camera, but clearly Nikon have done a really good job with this, and it seems to be a really good overall camera. You know, it's quite fast in that it'll do 9 frames per second with the battery grip underneath. The only thing I think which is a bit strange is they've left off focus peaking in the 4K footage, which is a bit weird. It's there in the 1080p, but not for 4K. And I use focus peaking all the time, so I think that's a bit of a letdown. Whether the processor can't handle this in 4K remains to be seen. The other thing that I'm not sure of is how the focusing is obviously in the 4K. If it's anything like what the other Nikon cameras are, it's probably not going to be very good. So we'll have to wait and see how the focus is. And if the focus isn't good and then they've left out focus peaking, well, that's a big downside to this camera. But overall, I think it's going to be amazing. I just read this morning that they're saying that it's about a stop better in ISO than what the other, the D810 was, and the D810 was astounding. I had that camera, and it was an amazing camera. So exciting things going to come. It's a Sony sensor inside, which again is amazing. That's why they're so much better than what the Canon systems are, this camera. And just wait, I think, until you see the new A9R or the A7 III. I think are going to be unbelievable. So let me know what you think about that, guys, because I'd be really interested to know. So let's now go to, that's the end of the news. I want to go to a shoot. Now, it's not a later shoot. It's actually a reasonably old one, but I thought we'd go through it together because I wanted to talk to you about how important this is with weddings. Now, one of the things that I've found with weddings is that you have to get to know the bride and groom before the actual wedding takes place, and it's really, really important to get to know them. And I think I do this more for the groom than I do with the bride. The brides are usually okay about being in front of the camera, but grooms usually are really quite nervous about being in front of a camera, especially if you start to use longer lenses like the 70-200. It's quite intimidating. So I always make sure that when bride and grooms book me, that there is a pre-wedding package, and I call it an engagement package, that we do before the wedding. And I usually do it around about 2 months or a month before the wedding. And this really is only solely to get them used to working with us before we do the wedding day. And it's a really, really great thing that we actually do. So they can choose a location if they like, or often they leave it for me to choose the location. But really, the whole shoot really is just about them relaxing on the day. I give these images free on Facebook. If they want to purchase them, they can. But I include this in my wedding package. But it's only included for digital images on Facebook on the contract, so they don't get any prints or digital files. They only get them shared on Facebook. If they want anything else, then they have to purchase them as an extra. So we'll have a look at the type of images, and I'll just show you basically, you know, what we sort of go through. Let me just enlarge this up just a little bit. Yeah, that'll do. So basically, this was the couple, and I really like to get them relaxed. So we chose an area in the city when we were doing this. It's called Hosier Lane, and it's a really beautiful laneway in Melbourne that people are allowed to do graffiti and artwork. It's more art than graffiti, but sometimes some areas they actually do start to use what they call tagging in there. But I was using, now this was when I was actually shooting the Nikon, so it's basically the 85. This was the D4S that I actually shot, but it's the same process as, like I said, Sony sensor anyway. This is an 85 1.4 lens, so again, it's the 85 lens, and I've always been prone to using my 85 anyway, and that's what I mostly use on my Sony when I'm doing these type of portraits as well, is the 85 Batis I'm using. So I usually set up by shooting the bride and groom together. Now, I actually shot this with just a flash, which was the, I think this was just my normal flashlight. Yeah, your normal hand flashlights. Speed lights, there you go. I always say flashlight. It was my speed light. And basically, they were just off camera, so I'm going to actually show you where they were. They were just off camera sort of through here, and I used an umbrella when we were doing these, and Kerry, my assistant, actually just had them on a stand, and there was a flashlight that was just on the thing there, and it illuminated them through here. I wanted to make this a really simple shoot, so this part of it only had a flashlight that was involved. Sometimes I used two flashlights. I did have two of them, speed lights. I'm saying flashlights again. Sometimes I had two speed lights, and occasionally I'll even use three. This was just using TTL and high-speed sync, so I basically just let it all run through like that, and you can sort of see where the illumination's coming in through the side. The second shot that we can look at here too is, I always like to get the groom, because then I'll start to try and get him relaxed in not being scared and stuff like that on the day. So it's really, really important that they relax. And as soon as you start doing this, after a couple of minutes. Now remember, before I even started this, I actually did have them and talk to them for quite a while before we actually started shooting, because I've said that before, it's very important to get that communication together at the beginning before you start shooting. So I did relax them before that. And basically, I just said basically sit there like you would if you were talking to a couple of mates, and we sort of shot it that way. I then always start to get the bride-to-be sort of relaxed, and I always do poses that I think I'm going to do in the wedding, because the thing for me is I like to do this before the wedding, so then when we get to the wedding she'll know exactly what I'm actually talking about. And what I'm talking about here is that I'm telling her to lean into the wall in that area there, and then to sort of curve your back out, which gives you a lovely shape, and to turn your face directly back towards me. Again, this is really, really important. It's the 85mm lens again. But you can see how, if you look at it, she's really arching her back in that area, and she's also bending her knee. One of the things that you've got to remember too is if they have things that bend, try and make them bend, because it's a much more interesting image if you can get them to do it that way. If we go on to the next image, that's where I'm actually showing them just looking at each other. I've told him to put his hand behind there, leaning in, and the second one of that image, I just actually get them to move in and have a kiss. And again, I talk to them about trying not to pout too much, because this is another important thing as well. You don't want them to get the fish lips, and this is what you've really got to be careful of when you're doing weddings and this type of shot, that they don't get those fish lips, like looking like that, because it can look really, really bad. So you've got to talk to them about that. And some of the most beautiful moments actually are if you can get them just before they actually do kiss, as long as they haven't got those sort of fish lips type of look there. So it is a consideration to make. The other thing too, try and make sure you notice their hands are very open and relaxed. And I do tell them that always before, is to make sure that their hands are like ballerina hands, to keep them open and be very gentle with how they touch each other. Because if that was tense, it shows up in the photo. So really be aware of these things, guys, when you're actually taking photos, that you do have to be very conscious of things like hands when they're holding hands and when they're touching each other, that it's not causing that pressure actually on the face. And I will come back to the questions, guys, so keep asking them. The next one down is the same type of thing, but I've now told her to turn towards the wall and basically just lean in with one hand up high. So there's always one hand up high up here, and there's one hand up down low down there, which, you know, is also important. It gives a bit of shape. And again, she's pulling away down here from the wall, and she's turning her face directly towards me as well, which is all lit by that flash that I had from the front. We'll go to the next one. Then they're just sort of basically leaning against this old fence, trying to, you know, basically look relaxed. I do like to try and get them, if I can, to look as relaxed as possible. I don't like them all the time just smiling, and I really do like more sort of serious type looks. And you can see that, you know, even here, that they are both cuddling in together, but it's still more of a more serious look, and that's just the way that I like to shoot. So it's just the way I like to go. So it may not be what your taste is, but it's certainly what I love to go. And remember, the brides hire me for what I've already showed them. So I don't have to try and sell this stuff to them. They've already seen this work before, and they know exactly the type of work that it's going to be later on. Another thing I like to do too is to get them sitting down into corners like I've done here. Again, you can see when we're looking at this that her hand is nice and open. Her hand here is nice and relaxed on his leg. They're all things that you've got to watch. The other thing too that you've got to watch is feet. Be very careful and conscious about feet, because if she was pointing her feet that way, it looks really awkward. So be very, very careful about how the feet are actually pointed. It's much nicer to sort of see the feet side on like this. So be careful about that too. These are all things that you need to look at as well. This again was just lit by an umbrella with the speed light in it, which was just off the camera through the side, coming in directly through here this way. Again, if we go on to the next one, this is just more of a close-up of the couple together. Another one here, which I did too, which I really, really like. I wanted to incorporate that bike that was there inside the lane, just have them kissing gently. It was sort of spitting a little bit, so we grabbed the umbrella that was there too. But look for props that you can think that can help. And, you know, and it is nice to get these sort of little props that you can grab like this that will help you sort of just make the image a little bit more interesting when you're trying to deal with a couple. And again, this is the same area, but I've then gone landscape or portrait instead of being landscape. And again, I've tried to show that restaurant sign that's above them to give a bit of colour into the image as well. I do some black and white ones as well that we're looking at here that has a bit of more of a grungy type look to it. And again, I always do images and show them a couple of different ways. I'll always do a fairly wide image, and then I'll do a close-up image to give them different images that they can look at. Black and white I also like to give too, so I do like to give a complete range of images. Now this next one was really interesting because it's actually not really sharp. I think I've moved or something when I actually did this, but sometimes this can prove that you can show images that really aren't perfect. And I've showed this because I love the expressions on their face and everything when they're walking. I just adore the way that this image looks. So even though he's not that sharp, if I come up, I'll just see if I can... You can see there that it's had a bit of movement, I think, when we're looking at this, and you can even see it on her there. But, you know, it's just lovely because I love the way that they're looking at each other. It's really romantic. And again, I've just had them sitting against a wall. That should be straightened a bit. Perfection in me starts to do my head in. And again, you can sort of just see what I've done here. I've added this light. This light was coming down from above, and I just wanted to use that to give a bit of a kick in the image, that you can sort of see that it's just gently just hitting her. And I really like the way that it's lighting up her hair a little bit. And I really, you know, I just love things like that. Again, there's a black and white version of that. There's a close-up version. And this is where we moved and had, I'm using ice lights here. So there's 2 ice lights just off the camera. There's one ice light that's over this side, and there's another ice light that's over that side. I've balanced for the ambient exposure first, and then I've filled in with the ice light to light them up. And I just love the way that looks. I love using continuous light in this kind of a scenario. You can see that I've shot that with 1.4 with the lens as well. This is another one too where they're cuddling, so it's the same shot basically as this, but now I'm giving the full body as well. You can now see what the background is, which is a bunch of bags lit up in the background. It's hard to tell there because of the compression. And then I just went outside and we just did stuff also walking around Melbourne. That was in the plaza area. And there was one here where we went a bit later where the light was on, and we did a similar shot in this lovely alley. Again, we went out there where it was wet and did another one with them kissing down in the laneway. And we even went back here a little bit later to, and hold the hands where they were walking just towards me. So that gives you an idea about, the type of images that I'll shoot when I'm doing an engagement session with couples. So I just thought I'd show you that to go through it. So I hope you like looking at those. So let's go into questions. So what I'm going to do is just drag this over here. And let's look at them together, what people are saying. So let's have a look. Yes, someone's saying, yes, the a6500 firmware update, but haven't tested it yet. Didn't the previous update also mention some were improvements? Yeah, they always do, and I've never really been able to see much improvements at all in the updates that have been given to me so far. Mike said the a6500 update works perfectly, no glitches this time. Like I said, I've upgraded mine fine, but it hasn't had... I haven't noticed any difference with the stabilization, so that's interesting on that one, yeah. And Three Trees Photography said, I think the A9 definitely looks different than other Sonys, and it does. I've found that the color definitely is much nicer for skin tones, particularly with the A9 than it is with the other cameras that I've got, the A7R2, the a6500, the a6300, the A7S. They definitely have improved the color science, so I suppose you're going to keep seeing that now all along. Sony clearly are only new in this area, but they're obviously improving continuously. So I don't think Canon can say any longer, if you're looking at the A9, that the color is not as good. I think it is now. It's easily as good on the Sony A9 as it is on the Canons. But take that test and see what you think. I am DeBrown said, I love that price point. Is that for the D850, Tony? Because I think if it is, it's quite cheap actually. I was surprised it came in at the price it came in. I think it was 4,300 or something. It's not that dear for what it is. It's so much cheaper than what I paid for the A9, for instance. So Sony are going to have to be competitive with their camera pricing, I think, which could be a good thing. Delta Dave said, Nikon reps. Thank you so much. Someone just donated me $5, which was Delta Dave. Thank you so much, Dave. What else have we got here? Delta Dave said, Nikon reps won't cough up that the D850 has a sensor, Sony sensor. It will be. It'll be the same, basically the same sensor as the A9, as the A7R2. It's basically going to be that. And because it's newer in the fact that the Nikon have just got it, what is the A7R3 now, or 2 is 2 years old or something? Obviously, they're going to manipulate that sensor to give better results than what you'll get on the A7R2 at the moment. So I think it probably will be the best sensor actually at the moment on the market. Because at the moment, I think the A7R2 is. I think the D850 will probably surpass that. But obviously, it won't be long until Sony release their next camera, which is probably just going to kick ass, and we'll have to wait for that, but I'm sure that their next sensor will blow the D850 out of the water. No one would. It's good marketing. They admit they're using direct competitors' components. Yeah, that's what he's saying there. Three Tree said, top production on the live stream. Oh, thanks, mate. Delta Dave said, the A99 II is just as well spec'd as the Nikon. And yeah, it is. That's the interesting thing. It is. The A99 II is an amazing camera. It's just for some reason Sony never push it. I haven't used it, so I can't comment on how good it is. But everyone that does use it say it is just as well spec'd. It's going to be interesting to see how they two compare later on. I think I can talk from when I used the D810, and that was an outstanding camera. I think the A7R II is just as good, if not better, definitely with technology. I can't wait to see what they do with the new A9R. I personally won't be buying it, not for a while anyway, because I don't need 70 megapixel file sizes, which is probably what they're going to throw at that camera. I'll probably be more interested in the A7 III, whatever they do with that one. What else have we got here? Delta Dave said 12 frames per second. Robert said, TSA update. I travelled outside the US early in August and I went through the TSA at HSV and Atlanta, I think that might be, and I found I had to take... I only had to take out my laptop. Okay, so they're not doing those big checks yet, which is interesting. I thought they were starting to do that. So perhaps they're not doing it. Perhaps they've decided that they're not going to push it that far. Let me know if you have found that you have to go through those new TSA requirements. What else were we? I am DeBrown said he got... Oh, not yet. He hasn't got his the Sony 70-200 2.8 yet. I got it, but what I ordered was an f4. It finally arrived. Oh, so you've ordered the f4. I love my f4 70-200. And I'm not going to purchase the 2.8 for the reasons why I just don't want to carry around that weight. And if I need anything faster than f4, I'll be using primes anyway, so I'm not fussed about that. So I'm really, really happy with the f4 version. And that lens for me is amazing. It's so sharp. The 2.8 obviously is going to be a better lens, but I'm so happy with what the f4 gives me that at this stage there's no reason why I'd want to upgrade. I love that lens, and I use it on my a6500 as well. It's superb. The 70-200 f4 is great. What else have we got? Dave Johnson said, I hear you got my 70-200 2.8 last Tuesday, but my model cancelled on me this week, so I wasn't to use it yet. I'm not sure what David means there. Let us know, David, what you actually mean. What else have we got? Any other questions? Delta Dave said he loved the black and white on those images that I showed before. I love black and white too. They're really, really interesting to look at, I think. And I will always supply bright and greens with black and white images as well. And even portraits, I'll always do black and whites as well, just to change things up a bit. Iron Brown said yes for the D850. Yep. I know it was. The D850, for what they've given, is actually a really well-priced bit of kit. I'm surprised. I thought it would have been closer to 4,000 US. And what is it? 4.3, I think, isn't it? 3.3 or something. You do have to think, though, if you want the maximum frames per second, you're going to have to buy the battery grip, and that's about $500, which takes it close to $4,000. But without the battery grip, it's an amazing piece of technology for the price they're offering it at. I'm surprised. I thought it would have been closer to 4. Keith is here. So hi, Keith. How are you? I am DeBrown said, look at the avatar of Sean Flores. He is mocking us. Where is he? Let me have a look. Where is Sean Flores? Oh, it's because he's got no hair. I love it. This is sexy. I mean, look at this. Oh, Tag the Shooter said, well, I'm loving my 100-400. And the 70-200. Oh, why wouldn't you? I'd love to play with the 100-400. I may get that lens one day. I'd love to do it because sometimes I'd love to just capture some birds that I see. And this is the flying birds, not the other birds. I'd love to try capturing birds, and I think that would be a fantastic lens. So I may buy that lens one day. What else have we got? David Johnson said, I received my 70-200 lens. And he had a model shoot planned for this week, but my model cancelled on me. You know what? I discussed this When I went to How to Get Models the other day, if it was a trade for print, it happens all the time. I've not really had it happen to me, luckily, because mostly they pay, but they've paid for the shoot. Or I would probably pay for a model shoot, and then that's not going to happen. But yeah, that happens all the time where trade for print models are cancelling on shoots. Let me know if it was a trade for print one day, because I'd be curious to know. Brad said, don't forget the battery charger to go along with the battery needed for the 9 frames per second. Yeah, and I know that's expensive too, I think, Brad, wasn't it? Like, it was a couple of $100 or something. And you need a big new battery as well. I think it's the same battery that the A9 has, that the D5 has, which is a really expensive battery. So if you are going to buy that battery grip, plus the charger, plus that battery, it does end up being over $4,000, but you don't need it. I would be quite comfortable using that camera without the battery grip. So if you want to use it for its basic package, it's still a really good deal. Thomas said, is Canon in trouble now? I think they've been in trouble for a while, to be honest. I really do. Unless they start looking after the people that are using their gear, people are going to switch. I mean, I really can't understand at the moment why you would want to use Canon. Their latest 5D Mark IV, the actual video file format in that camera absolutely sucks. The new 6D Mark II is really, it's a bomb. I don't know what's going to happen with Canon. If they're not careful, they are going to lose people, and I think Canon need to wake up. They obviously are protecting their film line and not giving things further down to everyone else, and I think that's a really stupid marketing thing, I mean, they only put the picture profiles in there because people complain. Now, I know Sony haven't done that with the A9. I'm still hoping they do give picture profiles, but if you're looking at the technology that the A9 has, it's incredible. Canon just keeps shooting themselves in the foot. They need to really wake up and start looking after their customers. MamFam said neither Canon nor Nikon are in trouble. And I think, look, I hope that you're correct, MamFan, because I want all these companies to succeed, because if they don't, there'd be no reason for people like Sony or whoever else to innovate and to give you new things. So I think the worst thing that you could have in the marketplace is one of those camera manufacturers disappearing, because the more competition that's there, the better it is for everyone. And I think everyone needs to understand that competition's good for everyone. So I hope they're not. But I do think if Canon don't start really looking after their customers, they may lose a lot of customers. Now, they may not lose customers that they already have, but if you were going into the market as a new photographer, well, then you might not choose Canon, and that's what they've got to think about. Keith said Canon is crying right now, and I think they will be upset about this D850, that's for sure. But remains to be seen too how the focus is. Like I said, for 4K and video footage on that camera, it may be an issue. Let's wait and see. And Keith is saying Nikon is listening to the photographers, and I think they are, because this seems to be, from what I can tell, a really good release that they've given. If they had to do something, and they did have to do something, I think they've really nailed this one. What else have we got? David said Canon is like Apple. People buy into Canon because it's Canon, not because it gives them the best performance. And you may be right, David. I mean, I am an Apple geek as well, and I do buy into Apple because it's Apple, and I probably have to agree with that in a way. But new people that are starting off may not, if they don't up their technology. Let's see what Canon bring out in response to this, or what they do with a mirrorless camera. Nikon have already said they're going to bring out a mirrorless camera very soon. So Canon are going to have to eventually innovate. So let's see actually what happens. Sniper V said, Canon's long history of lenses out there are keeping people locked in. That's the case at the moment, but I think you're going to find eventually people like Sony and stuff are going to catch up. Look, they won't catch up with all of their lenses, but they will have enough lenses to keep everyone happy. I think if you think about it, the amount of lenses that Sony have got for such a new system is pretty outstanding, really. And that's how you've got to look at it. If you think that they've released all of these lenses in a couple of years, what are they going to be like in another couple of years' time? All of this business about the sports lenses are not going to be there anymore. They'll have 400 2.8s, etc. That will come. It's only a matter of time. Yeah, Keith said Nikon states that it's going to be one stop better. I know, that's incredible. Like, if that is true and it has gained a stop of ISO, that camera is going to be a beast. And I can't wait to see what the new Sony's release. Imagine what they're going to give with the A9R. Oh, I just can't wait to see what's going to happen. George, you said, I just got here, Dave. Are you buying the D850? No, I'm not. But look, if I was still a Nikon shooter, I would definitely. And like I said, I used to shoot the D810, and I love that camera. I think that they've done a really good job with this, guys. I really do think that camera is an outstanding camera, and I think it seems to be one that could be used for anything. There's a couple of things that interest me about that camera. I'm not buying it, but there's a couple of things that really interest me, and I wish Sony would do that too. The main thing with that camera that I think that Sony should take is the fact that it has a true, well, it's basically, it shoots in 40 odd megapixels, but they've given also a 20 odd megapixel RAW version, which gives the full frame view. And I think that's what Sony should do too, because I use my A7R II all the time in things like weddings and stuff, but often I don't need that file size. So I just wish that Sony would give a way to give, say, around about that 20 megapixel file size without going into Super 35, because that affects obviously your field of view. Well, the D850 are giving you that option in that camera. They are giving you Super 35 view, but they're also giving you a lower res version of the full frame, which is what I wish Sony would do. It would be fantastic, because then you could use that all the time. So the good thing with that is you could be using that camera in weddings where you want to, say, shoot 20 odd megapixel, and then if you have something that you know you want to blow up into a massive portrait, you can then stick it onto its 40 odd megapixel sensor. So it's a great feature. They're little things, I think, where Sony has been listening to customers, and I wish Sony would actually do that too. Let me know if you think that's a good idea. The dual card slots also is really good, but the A9 has that. But I think I'm hoping that Sony now brings that into all of their cameras from here on in. Hopefully the A7 III will have that. Sniper V said, I'd also imagine most photographers aren't super gear nerds, so although Canon doesn't have the most features, the product is professional and works. And it does. I mean, if you want a camera that's just going to work, it does. Except if you're using the 5D Mark IV and you want it for video, it just doesn't work. That system sucks. And the Mark II, the 6D Mark II, is just terrible. Delta Dave said Sony will have a 400 fast prime before the Tokyo Olympics, and I agree with you. I think that's going to happen. It's definitely going to happen. Sony wouldn't have released the A9 if they weren't going to release fast glass and long glass, so it's definitely going to happen. I'm going to hear said Canon can get alive again with a 90D that can handle 4K and good pitch profiles with a 20 megapixel lens. Right now, Canon looks like dated product, especially on the 1500 range. And I hope you're right, because like I said, there's nothing better than competition. Brad said at B&H, D5 battery is 149. And yes, the dual slot charger is 370. I can never justify the cost for my D810. And that's the problem, isn't it? It's really expensive, and it does start to add up if you're going to add the battery, the charger, plus the grip. Mav Fan said the majority of buyers are not gear nerds like us. They have no idea about ISO range, 14-bit versus 12-bit, video codecs, rolling shutter, or a dozen other topics that we think are critical. And you may be right, mate. We are very critical because we're all gear nerds. We're all here. I still like to think, though, that I'm still a photographer deep down more than a gear nerd. Keith said Sony need to add QXD cards. I wish they did, actually. I mean, that would be so much faster. They're expensive, though. I used to use that in my D4S. I had QXD cards in that. But it would be much quicker to clear your buffer if they did that. It'd be much better. They probably will. I'm surprised because it's a Sony technology. Another person said here, if Sony's next camera don't have dual cards, I'm switching to Nikon for photos for sure. I think they will. I'd be surprised if they don't have the dual card slots. What else have we got here? Mav Fan said, oops, Sniper versus her. David, read your post just as I sent mine. Okay, I'm not quite sure what that means. So let me know if you have any other questions too. Let me know if you think the D850 would be a good buy. I think that you're going to find there's not going to be any Sony releases this year. I think you're going to find it's going to be early in 2018 that Sony, they may announce something later this year, but I don't think any of these cameras are actually going to be released this year. I think it's going to be early sometime in 2018. And I think that there'll probably be a A7 III first. And then I think there will be something like an A9S or something like that next. I don't think the A9R will be released first. I think it probably will be something in the video side of things. And I'm only saying that because of the way they left the picture profiles out of the A9. I think they've got something up their sleeves, Sony, to release something for video, something that shoots 4K 60p. It'll have the dual card slots, better focusing, things like that. I'm hoping they have a flip-out screen. But I think that's probably the two cameras that are going to be released next. Keith said Nikon D850 is going to be a good buy. Oh, Tony, thank you so much. He said I'm his virtual mentor. It's because we look so alike. We're just different colours. I love it. Oh, that's funny. Thank you so much for that, Tony. I really appreciate it. When we come over there, mate, we're going to have a shoot. We'll look good together, won't we? Gregory A said the Sony A9 and A7R2 still better cameras because of EVF and eye focus. Well, I mean, they do definitely have better technology. I wouldn't say the A7R2 is a better camera than the D850 at this stage. We'll have to see. I think if you're talking about pure picture quality, I think the D850 is going to be better than the A7R2 at this stage. But remember, that's 2 years old. You'd expect that to happen. The A7R2 is an amazing camera, and I'm not going to sell mine. I still love that camera, but I think the D850 is going to kill it for still images. I think it will be way better. But like I said, just wait till the new Sony comes out. I'm sure it will kick ass, and I'm sure it will be way better than anything that's out there at this stage. We're just waiting. It's just a waiting game at this stage, guys. But I think the D850, no matter how you look at this, I love Sony, but I'm never one-sided to say that I would never use anything else. Like I said, I just bought the GH5, and I think that's a fantastic camera. Your camera is only a bit of gear that you'll use. And even though I adore Sony, I'm still going to give Nikon the credit for what they've done. They've released an amazing camera that I think is going to be terrific. And I think the sensor will outdo the A7R2. And it should, because it's 2 years newer than what the A7R2 is, so it should be doing better than what that is. I'm not saying the A7R2 is not a good camera, it is, but I think this will be better until something like the A7R3 or the A9R comes out. What else have we got? Hoping for 4K 60 from Sony. I know, look, after I've been shooting that GH5 in 4K 60p and being able to slow it down in 4K, it's just a game changer. I really hope that they bring that out. And I'd love an a6500 that has that in it. That would be so good. I'd buy that in a heartbeat. What else have we got here? If anything, Nikon has protected themselves against more defectors to the GFX, and that's quite possible too. They probably have protected themselves with people moving over to Fuji and stuff. Iron Brown said it would be fun if we have a shoot together. Yeah, I'd love that. I'd love to come over to the US and have a shoot with you guys. Maybe next year. What do you think of the A6700 will come up with? Maybe an A7000, whether it's going to be whatever it's going to be. Well, that'll be sometime next year. I think the a6700 will be next year, and I'm hoping it has a fully articulating screen for starters. I think that has to be a must. And I also think that it probably will have the 4K 60p. I don't know whether they'll be able to fit 2 dual card slots in that camera, though, because it's so small. So the only way they can get around that is if they make the body much bigger, and I don't really want that body to be much bigger. I'm prepared to live with the 1 card slot if they give me the articulating screen, the fully articulating screen, and the 4K 60p. I just love that. I mean, I love my a6500, and it probably will have better focusing. It'll probably have the focusing of the A9, which is much better than what I've even got on my a6500. And a better touchscreen. That has to be a must. The touchscreen needs to be a bit better. I have found the A9 is a better touchscreen than the A6500. So I'm hoping that the next A6700, whatever, will have a better touchscreen. I think I'm good with my a6500 and the a7R II, Robert, and there's no reason why you wouldn't be any good with that camera. They're amazing cameras, and if you are happy with that, and you should be, there's no reason to upgrade. Keith said, I have to go soon. I need to find out how to get back from San Francisco tomorrow. That's fine, Keith. It's nice of you to pop in, mate. Brad said, I fear Sony will not equip the next A7S with dual memory or the larger batteries. Will they keep that for the A9 series? How will they distinguish an A9 if A7 has that usability? Well, it depends how long it is before they release it. If it's released sort of around March next year, they may give most of the features of the A9. They may just distinguish the A9 with that fast processor, which is, like I said, for sports. I'm hoping that they do start to put dual card slots in everything. They may say, well, we're going to keep that dual card slots for the A9 series, and we're going to keep the fast processing, obviously, for the A9. But it remains to be seen. I'm hoping that Sony do tend to bring things down to the cameras that are lower, so I'm hoping that they do that. They may just say that the only difference we're going to have is that faster processing, so we'll have to wait and see. What else have we got? Tag the Shooter said, fix the 4K screen on the sun for the a6500. Yeah, I know. After I've shot with the A9 outside, that's such a game changer if you're dealing with that dimming in 4K. It's terrible, the a6500, how it dims so much. It's unusable. That's why I've got that, the focus, so you can get past that. It makes it usable, but it's terrible how it dims so much. I think that's to do with the battery, stopping it from overheating. What else have we got? All new Sony cameras should have the fully functional touchscreen. No excuse. I know, I don't know why they don't. They make great mobile phones. Why on earth don't they give us a decent touchscreen? After using the GH5, that touchscreen is amazing. Oh my God, I wish the Sony would do that. And they've got to do it eventually, but I so wish that they give us that touchscreen. What else have we got? They make phones with touchscreens, and I just said that. Yes, that's so true. It's almost 4 a.m. here in Sweden. Time to go to bed. It's amazing that you're still up. If there was a gun on your head and you have to choose just one camera between the a6500 and the GH5, which one will you choose and why? If I had to choose one camera between those two, I'd choose the a6500 because it's a better overall camera for video and stills. The GH5, and I have to be honest here, I think is way better for video than what the a6500 is. But if you're dealing with a camera that's fusion, that can do stills and video, there's nothing better than the a6500. I think that's the best camera on the market for that. Focusing is incredible. It's got a reasonable touchscreen at the back. It's got stabilization built in. It gives incredible quality for images. It's an amazing all-around camera. So if I had to choose one, I'd choose that. What else? That's right. Ask him to redo the test. It's not possible that the A9 was that bad. Yeah, I know. That's the thing, Frank, and I agree. I think that test was flawed. He was using that camera in a way it shouldn't be. He used the A9 totally wrong for using tracking. Definitely, you've got to use something like wide area or something. Let that camera do what it's designed to do, and that's the way it should be worked. And he didn't do any of that when you watch that video, and I really think he should redo that test because it actually is a flawed test. But yeah. All right, guys, well, that's been around an hour, so we might call it a day. Oh, now, the other thing too is I'm going to give a video very, very soon about using colour theory. I'm going to give you colour theory, and I'm hoping it's something that you're really interested in. I'm going to go through colour theory for you and how it can be used to correct images in Photoshop and Lightroom, and how you use that colour theory to manipulate, say, your levels and things like that, and your curves. So it will be sort of a full-on theory lesson, but I've prepared something that I can actually give to you. So I'm going to give you that in the coming days, because I thought it might be something really, really interesting for you that you can learn. So let me know if you'd be interested in that. So it will be full-on colour theory in it, but it will really help you in colour correcting for things like colour casts and how to know which image or channel to pull down in your levels and things like that. So let me know if you'd be interested in that, because I have nearly got that prepared, so I'm going to share that with you very soon. I'm obviously also going to continue with the setting up your wedding and photography business as well. So let me just follow me on that. Iron de Brown just said, just noticed that you barely have eyebrows. I have. Look, it's just they're blonde. I actually have really, you know what? I've had so many people that actually say I haven't got eyebrows, and that's because I'm so fair. I have really, really white hair, and it's funny because people say that all the time. I love it. And when you're saying when you've said, is that for Final Cut or Adobe, it won't matter, because the theory is for anything. It's to basically help you in using color theory to be able to edit colors in Final Cut, in Adobe Lightroom, whatever you're using, it will help you. So yeah, I'm going to give a color theory talk to you very, very soon. I've just about prepared that, so I'm just about ready to go. And look, I have got eyebrows. I'm going to go full screen. Here we go. Look, check. Can you see them? Tony, you're a shocker. Oh, I love it. What a crack up. Saying you may need to check my DNA. Oh, I love it. I don't think I'm going to come over with you. I think if I came over to the US, Tony, with you, I think we get into trouble. I'm not sure it might be a good idea. All right, guys. Well, I'm going to end the day there. Thanks so much for watching. If you can, give me a big thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon for the next video in the coming days. And they're still commenting. You can't see you can't see your eyebrows either. Tony's saying he hasn't got any eyebrows either. All right, guys, I'm heading out. I'm going to go get some lunch. Been a pleasure talking to you all, and I'll see you all again soon for the next video. G'day, guys. Bye.